Welcome to the All-Star Planning Podcast. My name is Kelsey, and this is the place where I talk all things teacher lesson plans. Today, I'm talking about what to do when most of your class is absent. I find that most of my class is absent on days before breaks. It's just a thing. And this has been my entire teaching career. Day before Christmas break this year was December 23rd. Not a lot of people want to come to school or send their kids to school on December 23rd, so the kids stayed home. And honestly, I can't blame them. I wanted to stay home too. But I find this quite a bit. But you may also have most of your class absent if there's a field trip for some reason. This is probably more so true for high school than it is elementary. Elementary teachers, I'm pretty sure, would go on the field trip with kids. Just my assumption, unless you're like a specialist teacher and you have like 2 or 3 kids show up to your music class because the rest of the 3rd graders are on a field trip. I don't know that life. But there are days when most of your students are absent, and I have a few tips for you on what to do. So, you write your lesson plans, you have your curriculum calendar, and on, let's say, December 23rd, you decide that you're gonna teach a lesson. I usually don't teach a lesson the day before a break. I usually do some type of review or a test because I'm anticipating kids not being there. Just a tip from me to you. But let's just say you have a whole, learning lesson planned. So, my first recommendation, this is on the assumption that, actually there's 2 assumptions. Sometimes you know that most of the kids are going to be absent, blessing. Other times you are expecting there to be 30 kids in your class and then there's 3, and then turns out that the history teacher emailed you at 6:30 this morning saying, oh yeah, by the way, I'm taking a bunch of kids on a field trip. I have been in both situations. Getting the heads up is always easier, so if you are a teacher taking a massive number of kids out of the building or out of another teacher's class, let them know, please. Sometimes these are not even field trips, sometimes they're like band rehearsals or, there's a bunch of things going on in the school, yearbook pictures, whatever it is. If you're a teacher who's in control of these things, try to let other people know ahead of time. I know that you would because you're a kind, polite person with respect for others. Just don't drop the ball. Don't forget. Let people know. So, let's say that you do know that a bunch of kids are going to be absent. I recommend you do some type of review work or something that's very easy for students to make up. Usually what I do in these situations is I provide a review assignment, and it's only required for the kids that are in class that day, and then usually I kind of more or less do it with them so that they don't feel like they're forced to do an extra assignment that other kids aren't asked to do. In high school, there's a big element of fairness, what they think is fair. So I usually help them quite a bit. It's usually, it's always a graded assignment, but it's usually going to be something that is going to help them out in the grade spectrum so that they are more inclined to do it with me, and it's not like a runaway class, because I have taught very large and very small classes. Very small classes, like single-digit classes, they can be difficult to manage because the kids kind of feel like it's very casual. So when you have classes of like 3 or 4 kids in a particular day, they usually find it to be very casual. So in that case, I like to say, this is a grade assignment, but I'm going to do it with you so you'll get a good grade. Just stick it out with me. That's the first thing. Other times, like before a break, when you kind of have an idea that the kids aren't going to show up for one reason or another, I would again do a review assignment that's easy for them to make up because, they didn't go out on a field trip. They stayed home because their parents wanted them to stay home, or because they're in high school and they were just too lazy to get out of bed that morning. There's a lot of reasons. But regardless, you want it to be something that's kind of easy for them to make up. This way you're not chasing them down for lost or missing assignments. Plus, the kids in class will appreciate that they got an easy assignment because they feel like they got duped when they come to school and there's only 4 kids in the classroom with them. They're like, man, I gotta do this. I should have just stayed home. Still have to give something. Just watching a movie is not a great idea. There are some times where movies can be helpful and educational. I can personally think of a few that have stuck with me over the years, education-wise, just a few though. But for the most part, I think that just throwing on a video is not a great idea in a pinch. Although I will say there are some that are absolutely excellent. I actually have done a few, particularly with science classes, of having okay, we're going to watch this movie and it is a terrible movie in terms of science, and I wrote out a worksheet. These are all of the issues with the movie. Tell me why this particular issue is an issue according to science. That's a good one. So sometimes you can turn it into something, but don't just put on the Polar Express because it's Christmas break, unless you read the Polar Express. Good and bad, people. There's good movies, there's bad movies, and there's ways to do it effectively. Make sure you're doing it the right way. So that's another thing that you can do right before a break. And this is probably the one that I do the most often. Okay? This one is, I would just teach my lesson anyway. And I know that sounds crazy. Part of it is because I teach high school, so it's easy for me to tell the kids, well, you missed school, it's your responsibility to make it up, go read the book, here's the notes. In Google Classroom for years, I've been using Google Classroom for years, but up until 2020, it was more or less a resource for my kids for extra material. So I would post the class notes, I would post a homework assignment, I would post vocabulary words, and then I would go onto YouTube and find videos that would help them with that day's lesson, so that whether they were studying for a test or they missed the class for whatever reason, they could kind of catch up on their own. I usually do that. I have them go learn it on their own. Now, the reason I do this is because my students, I know, are capable of doing it, first off. And second is that my curriculum allows for this. And here's how. The All-Star Planning Method has allowed me to build a complete draft of my school year. I know that on March 17th, according to my outline, I should be done teaching brand new AP Chemistry curriculum. I know that on the last week of April, I don't particularly remember what date it is, but last week of April, I will be done teaching new stuff for my year one chemistry kids. And then the rest of the year is, review time, and what did we do well this year? What did we not do so well at this year? What do we need to go back and fix? So with all of that wiggle room at the end of the year, I can go back and reteach an entire lesson. I can also, at this point, let's say, this could happen on a snow day even, if you have to reschedule stuff, or a weather day for other people elsewhere, an earthquake day, a tornado day, a hurricane day. I don't know what they have elsewhere. We have snow days. So when we have a snow day, we skip that day. And let's say the snow day was on a Wednesday, we skip Wednesday. When we go to school, it's Thursday. It's a purple day, or a day 2, or a B day, or however it would be. It sticks to the schedule that was already originally planned on. So let's say that lesson, in terms of chemistry, let's say that it was on percent by mass. I would truncate my percent by mass lesson and my hydrates lesson, because I teach them back to back, and I'd squeeze them together into one lesson. So too many lessons makes one big lesson. I would do that. If my lesson, let's say, was on, I don't know, solution solubility. Let's say it's saturation curves. I would change my lab 3 days from there into an inquiry lab, and the kids would learn it on their own. If the lab were on, if the lesson were on parts of the atom, I would tell the kids, I would, teach the lesson, they're not there for whatever reason, and I would reteach it when we got back to bonding. Integrate it back in. Make sure that you all the kids are there when you do teach it. For, let's say it was electrolytes, I usually teach that with solutions. I also teach it with ionic bonding. I teach it quite a few times. So if they missed the ionic bonding lesson and they didn't know about electrolytes, I would teach it when we got to solutions, and I would teach it again when we got to acid base. And all of this is because I know my curriculum frontwards and backwards. So when there's an issue, I know where to put my reteaching in. The school that I'm in now, they call it spiral review. I've literally never heard of this term before. They call it spiral review. So you take something from the beginning of the year and then you like spin it in throughout the year, right? Spiral it. I just think of like a spiral ham when I think of the word spiral. It's a silly word to me. So when you know your curriculum, you know where you can put other things later in the year to make sure that the kids understand them when you have to give it as a mini lesson or as a homework assignment that they have to learn on their own, or it's a day that a bunch of kids aren't there. Maybe it's the high school teacher in me, but I always just push on. I teach, baby. Part of that is how I get my 6 weeks of review. It's because I don't stop. We just keep going. Now, I don't do that all the time. I have 14 units in my course, and there is a review before each test, and there's 14 tests, one for each unit. So for me, that's already 28 days between review and tests. And then not this year, but last year, my do-nows were always review questions. My do-nows were 5 multiple choice review questions, and I had like a big question bank, and every single month I would add more content to the question bank based on what the kids had learned. So like my question bank in September is primarily measurement and basic science skills, but by the time we hit March, it's on everything from science skills all the way through to acid base. So that was another way that I just reviewed. And I made sure that the kids were, learning the whole time. My do-nows are a little bit different now with, digital, hybrid, whatever teaching. But that's what you can do when the kids are absent. I personally prefer to push through, but it's not always a possibility. But if you know the kids are going to be absent, kind of maybe take it as a slower day and do a review activity. And here's the thing, you don't have to make a new review activity. You can just go shopping through your teacher binder or file cabinet or your Google Drive and just go find something from September or October, things that you've already done before, and just do them again. This is also a great time to make up other things. So let's say you had a snow day in November and you missed a lesson and the kids were supposed to learn it on their own, and now it's January or February and you have we have a February break, so perhaps it's the day before February break. You go back and you make sure that the thing that they missed on that snow day is reinforced again. So you can kind of it's going to be a personal thing. But when you have a really good foundation, a background, a good curriculum, you have a good outline, mine's literally on the calendar, you can really figure out where these pieces to your puzzle go. I wish I could help every single one of you with all of your content, but I can't. I just know chemistry based on New York State science learning standards. So there's that. But my strategy will help anybody create their own outline. So if you're interested in that basic outline, I have the All-Star Planning Introductory Masterclass. You can find that at plan.kelseyreeby.com. It's linked, if you're watching on YouTube, below the video. If you're listening to the audio, it's linked in the show notes. That's where I show you, just in 45 minutes, it's a free masterclass. It shows you the 5 pieces of my All-Star Planning method, and it'll get you a really good start at building your kind of foundation curriculum. You can see my lesson plan template. You can see how I organize my Google Slides calendar to kind of outline where I'm going and what we're doing. It's color-coded. It's nice. So again, you can find that at plan.kelseyreeby.com, and otherwise subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss anything. I have some pretty epic tips here, and I know you don't want to miss them. So that's all for now, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.